Okay, so let's talk about what we do for the Donnellus Miller. Step number 1, you need to fix your tube position. So Donnellus Miller is a cassette tabletop exam. Cassette is no longer inside the butt key. So that means I need to change my detector setting, right? Mm-hmm. That means I do not need my detent, correct? Mm-hmm. So detector switched, detent is now off. Take your tube, drag it over here. You are going to spin your tube. Handle, down, turn it this way. Okay, so now it's facing the wall butt key, right? Not enough. Handle down. Go one more notch over. You see this? You're going to take this and bring it over here. Does that make sense? One more notch. Locks into place. This is 30 degrees. This is about what you want for your Donnellus Miller. Tube angle. This is cross table. So this needs to be 90 degrees. Okay. Do not do this and call it a day. That is not 90 degrees. What is that?
86.
86. Make sure you give it time to settle so it's 90 degrees. Okay? Now our tube is ready, but our patient is not. To get your patient ready for this exam, you're going to ask your patient to slide as close to you as possible. So slide towards the edge of the bed here. Good.
Sorry.
Okay. Bring your shoulders over a tiny bit more. Very good. All right. You can bring your hips back to your left just a tiny bit. Good. All right. Patient is really close to the edge of the table, correct? Mm-hmm. This is where they need to be. Now we are ready to position. So, step number 1. Right now, we are going to act like the right leg is the affected hip. No, I'm sorry, the left leg. So the left leg is the one that is broken, right? There's a fracture here in the femur. We cannot turn this for a lateral. So we need to do this cross table. So what do? We ask them to move their unaffected leg. So with your unaffected leg, I want you to raise this up. Bend your knee. And they are going to bring this leg up 90 degrees. The femur should be pointing straight up to the ceiling. Right? Tibia, we're going to leave this relaxed. We're going to leave this sideways. But the femur should be pointing straight to the ceiling. Does that make sense? So don't do this. This is not sufficient. You need it all the way. Right? At the same time, you don't need to go so crazy that the patient does this, right? Just straight up at the ceiling. You okay?
Yeah. I just want to work out.
I think everyone needs to do stretches. None of us have had time to do anything like that. All right. So, I'm going to open up my collimation so we can kind of see where we are, right? So everyone see my crosshair here? We are going to take this crosshair and we are going to put it in the crotch, in the groin area, in between the legs. I'm going to take the crosshair and literally put it right there.
I feel crazy for, I don't know, filming it. All right, just boom. Okay.
Okay, right in between the legs. Make sense? Once you do this, the leg can come back down. So you do not need to leave the leg floating in the air the entire time, right? Make things easy for your patient. Lift it up, put it right between the legs, bring the leg back down immediately. Why is it so important that the femur is straight up and down? Because if the femur is not up and down, the area between the legs is going to look different. It's going to look too distal, and you will not be at the neck of the femur. Okay. I have my board, my IR here, right? Okay, I'm going to do the good thing and not reach over my patient. I'm going to come over here to my patient, look for the crest. The top of the board is going to go above the crest. Right? If you have a cassette holder, you can use it here. If you don't, you can just ask your patient to hold it. Just put your hand at the top here. Good. So we are going to take this and center our IR to the tube. Okay, so the tube should be going through the femoral neck. Now the IR is also centered to the femoral neck. Does that make sense? I have an angle on this board, right? This angle should match the angle of my tube. So whatever this angle is, I should have the same angle over here. So I can turn this a bit more. Right? But don't put it all the way flat like this. Right? Don't put it all the way out like this. Make sure it matches whatever your tube is. Right about there. Go ahead and hold that page, Reagan. All right, good. Right. Perfect, thank you. Perpendicular to the board. Great. So let me wait for this light to go out.
Oh.
I have a question. Mr.
Yes.
Klein, do you still want us to measure it 40 with the tape? or-
Yes, I do. So we are about to get to that. Right after I show you that we are actually at the neck of the femur.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. So, as is, right? Do you remember how we said we can find the femoral neck from the as is?
2 and 4.
Good. 2 inches medial. So right, 4 inches down, right? So this should also be at the crease. Remember, if the patient has had trauma to the femur, are you going to say, well, can you please slightly bend your leg so I can find your crease? No, do not do that, right? So either feel for the crease naturally or just do 2 by 4. But this should be where the neck is. Let's see how we're doing. How was it? Dead center, right?
Yeah.
There we go. So that is how you find your femoral neck on the Danieli's Miller. Just aim between the legs.
Okay, so the cross, aiming at the cross should lead you at the femoral neck?
Correct.
Okay. Do you want us to double check to make sure, or I'm sure, never mind, that was
You don't, I mean, so I encourage you to do so.
Yeah.
You don't have to, but personally, I always feel like it's a good idea. So from here, I'm gonna, this IR is now centered to the femoral neck, right? This is now gonna be my landmark. As long as this does not move, no matter what happens to the tube, I can always bring this back to the femoral neck. Does that make sense? I don't need to palpate again. I don't need to lift the leg back up again. I just line up with my cassette because this is already centered to the femoral neck. So SID, what is that? 40, about 41, right? So it can come in a bit closer. All right, there's my 40, right? Am I on the centering? Right, still centered. Right. If I was off, what do? Just move it until I'm lined back up, right? Don't need to lift up the leg or anything. Just line back up here. Okay, I want you to take a look at something. What do you see right here?
I'll have the space between that and the table. How much space you-
I've got about 3 inches of space between my handle and the table, right? would I have any room if I did not bring my patient towards me? If I left Reagan in the center of the bed, could I get a 40-inch SID? No. So that is why I have the patient slide towards me first. Does that make sense? Right? So patient comes towards you first so that you can get your SID.
You have the collimation open all the way up.
Right now my collimation is all the way open. Now that I've got everything set up, I can begin to think about closing that collimation. So first things first, I'm going to close it sideways. All right, make sure that there's no light here on the sides. Okay, next up, I want to make sure that my height here is in the middle of the leg, right? I get that there, and I can now properly collimate vertically. Okay. Got my marker just barely inside my light, correct? Okay. And now we reach our final step. The last thing we do is we come back to our patient and ask them to lift this leg up one more time. So leg up, bend your knee, still in the middle of the crotch, right? You can see that our centering is straight down the middle of the leg as well, right? We've got above the leg, or in front of the leg, we've got behind the leg. We've got that entire hip area, correct? So we have the leg stay up here. We say, hold this please. Run back to the console, hold your breath, X-ray, and back in. All right, good. You can relax. And that is your Denalius Miller. Notice that I only needed to lift the leg twice, and only for very short periods of time. Right? That way I stress the patient as little as possible. Does that make sense? Everything else I could do without needing the leg up. Right? Just get my centering, get my cassette, get my SID, fix my collimation, leg back up one final time, and then X-ray. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Regan.
I was just gonna ask, since this is trauma, does it matter what this leg is doing?
Very good question. What happens, what is going on with the left leg does not matter.
Okay.
Because it's trauma, there's a break. Even if you try and turn the leg all the way AP or whatever, it's not going to affect the hip because they're not connected anymore, right? You're just only going to turn that bottom part. The top part's not going to change.
Okay. That's not funny.
It's a little bit funny. All right, so what do you think of the Denalius Miller?
It doesn't sound so bad.